The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We have a few others that are coming in, so we're going to give it just a moment. We'll be starting in about 2 minutes. Hey, hello, everyone. My name is Nate Rowe. I'm a Regional Sales Director at EdMap, and thank you for joining us today for our joint webinar with Hodges University, the All-In Approach to Course Materials, and we're focusing today on affordability and access. We're going to start off with Hodges University, and they're going to kind of tell their story about their course materials strategy, some of the issues that they were seeing and hearing from students and faculty on campus. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the solution that they used to solve those issues. Then we're going to move into a short piece about EdMap, and then we'll actually be unmuting the line so that everyone can interact and participate and ask questions from our panelists from Hodges. So joining us today from Hodges University, we have Carol Morrison, who is the Senior Vice President of Student and Support Services, Noah Lamb, who is the Director of Student Accounts and Auxiliary Services, and Erica Vaught, who is the Executive Vice President of Administrative Operations. So I am going to go ahead and hand over to Carol, who's going to get us started and tell us a little bit of a background on Hodges University.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hodges University was founded in 1990 in Naples, Florida as International College. We've been accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, Commission on Colleges, to award associate, bachelor's, and master's degrees since 1998. We are a private, not-for-profit institution offering a variety of programs live on our Naples and Fort Myers campuses, along with offering some of our programs online and in a self-paced format. We are a non-traditional institution, and we have an average age of 32.
And hello, everyone. My name is Noah Lamb. As Nate said, I'm the Director of Student Accounts and Auxiliary Services. When I got to the university about 3 years ago, I guess, one thing that we really wanted to start looking at was the affordability of the education that we were providing, and you know, some of those aspects included the tuition, institutional fees that we had, and one of the most important pieces for me was the course materials. and all of the materials that were being provided to students within each of their courses that they were taking, and making sure that, seeing if we could really help with the concerns that I was hearing from students, that, unfortunately those materials were just too expensive. They weren't able to get all of those materials like they needed in order to be really successful in the class. And one of those other concerns on, my side of things and with the institution was really on the student and faculty side of, one thing is that within our population of students and our employees is that we have a very diverse population. And I absolutely love that diversity that we have here. But one thing that we really needed to notice and look to see what we could help provide for our students was make sure that, that diversity stayed intact there, and we provided different things for the different sets of students we have, whether that be our English as a secondary language students, different self-paced programs we had, different things like that. And also a concern on my side was making sure that the students, faculty, staff, etc., were really accepting the changes that we were going to be implementing and we were trying to move forward with. So one of the things is that when we started looking at all these concerns that we had, and whether that be on the student side or on the faculty and staff side, one thing that we were always looking at, again, is that affordability aspect. For number one, for our students. I wanted to make sure that what we were providing to our students was very affordable, that we were for sure going to be able to make sure that they are successful in all of their courses and everything that they were doing, for that end result of getting their diploma and, getting that degree. And so that number one aspect for me was the student affordability and making sure that we could really provide that affordability for them. But also, an aspect of affordability was the institution as a whole, whether, because obviously, there are some institutional costs that come along with having a vendor of any sort in your institution. So that was something very important as well. Some more desired outcomes that I was wanting to really look at was a digital migration and an adoption within our course materials. So we could really provide the most to our students with all of those materials they needed for those courses. Another thing was access to materials on or before the first day of class. This was something that was very important, not just to me, but also the administration, because we do have a lot of courses that we consider mini terms, where our full-term courses are 15 weeks long, but we have numerous mini-term courses as well that are only 7.5 weeks long. So, making sure that they could get those materials on or before that first day was very important. We also, as Carol stated, we have our self-paced programs their programs were starting on different dates as well, and it's not really fully that full-term 15-week access. Another thing that was very important to me was that direct publisher relationship. In our previous vendor, we really did not have that relationship where I was speaking directly with publishers, whether for example, that be Cengage, Pearson, Wiley, McGraw-Hill, etc. We really didn't have those direct relationships with them that I was really looking for, so we could get the most out of those publishers, and we could get the most affordability out of them as well for discounts, etc. Something else that I was looking for was automation, and when we're doing exports to our vendors and they're doing imports into our SIS system, things like that, I was really wanting an automated system to where I'm not having designated people within my staff and within EdMap or within that vendor staff that are having to do all that. I was looking for really an ease of data to and from whoever we decided to go with. So one of the things we ended up doing was we ended up submitting an RFP to numerous vendors. There are a lot of aspects of that RFP, Many of the desired outcomes that we were looking about and that I just talked about were a part of that RFP, and they were very, very important when doing the RFP. That a lot of the vendors that we were sending this out to really kind of helped us and went into detail of those desired outcomes and how they could help us with that. Some of those that were emphasized was the digital materials provided to students. I was really looking for something that that expense was going directly on the student's account within our SIS system, to where it would be very easy for either our staff or the students to see what those expenses were. And at the very beginning, we had no discussion about an all-in model. That was something that through the vendors that we were looking at, they had not really talked to us about, to be very honest. So it was something new. It was something that I was very unaware of. And when this first RFP went out, EdMap was really not even included in that original RFP. It was something that I was unaware of EdMap at that point, and so they weren't even really in the discussion. But luckily, with that discovery of EdMap, we first discovered EdMap through a publisher relationship, and I would like to give a big shout out to Cengage for actually being the ones who talked to us about EdMap at first and said, hey, I see what you all are trying to do at Hodges University. I see what your all's institutional mission is. I think that you would really, really enjoy looking at, this vendor and, their EdMap, and here's some information about them. That discussion began in early February 2016, and, from the very beginning of those discussions, I really did start to realize, and I know that I think that Erica and Carol and some of the other administration also noticed that EdMap really aligned with Hodges University, whether that be our mission, the approach to affordability, or just being, a true partnership and that team player all around. So that was something that we really looked at very closely, and I'm very happy and excited that we were given that opportunity to learn more about EdMap. So within the discussions, we actually had an on-campus discussion in February 2016. Some of the reps from EdMap actually came to campus. One of those discussions was the all-in model. It was thoroughly discussed, and it was something that I was unaware of how that model really would work, but I was glad that we had that discussion. We also talked about, the organizational structure of EdMap and, how their team works, the key players within that implementation, and again, started noticing that a lot of their organizational structure and how, they work with implementations were really very, very similar to our organization and our structure and all of that. So we ended up moving forward with the contract, which was signed in June 2016. We immediately began the configuration of the all-in model. We started talking about that implementation aspect of what needs to be happening, the change management. We immediately began talking about the publisher contracts and the relationships we would be having with publishers directly. And EdMap was launched in January of this year for our winter 2017 term. So with one thing with EdMap that I would definitely say is different from some of our other vendors within the institution is that EdMap has truly become a partner within the institution. And for me personally, within my departments that I direct here at the university, and even in the administration, whether it be Carol or Erica, I think they would agree with me that this has become a true partnership, and it's been sort of a mentorship approach, and in saying, there were a lot of aspects of bringing in a new, textbook solutions vendor that I was unaware of, and they really helped us and guided us through a lot of those implementation aspects and things that I think, as an institutional, as a whole, we were kind of unaware of. So they really helped us with that. They really helped us and understood what we were wanting within our student population, and as an institution as well, really those needs of what we needed for our student population and as an institution. They really helped us see those and get a clear view of all of that. And strategically, they really helped us so much with the all-in model, with that digital migration of, the digital migration was just as important to EdMap as it was to Hodges University. And the next thing was something that, again, I was very unaware of, was the print on demand, or the POD, and the OER options, which is, the open educational resources. That was something that, again, we were sort of unaware of. It was something that we had not talked about a lot in the previous vendors, and so something like that. Like I said, the partnership grew so much, and it grew so quickly, and they helped us through every aspect. One aspect would be the change management as well. And that was something that we, something again that we needed to look very closely at, because this type of change and this type of implementation was so large, and it really affected not only our student population, but it affected the faculty, the staff, our IT support team, and it affected so many people that I would definitely say it's probably one of the most difficult aspects of an implementation this large. It's something that's, every institution that's on the phone today and listening in, this is something that you need to take very seriously. And to me personally, the communication aspect, we should have had so much more communication than what we did, but it still went very well. And you need to also think of who you're going to be involving in an implementation like this. And it really, again, it takes every aspect of an institution, whether that be, IT, administration, the student aspect, faculty, student services, etc. I mean, every piece of it needs to be thought out very much so, and to where you're making sure that that communication is always there, and you're getting communication out to each aspect of that change as quickly as possible, and being very precise and in all of that, to make sure that that change is made very well. It's very easy for the students, because again, this is a huge change for students. Whether you do an all-in model or you just are bringing in a new vendor, it's always going to be very important to communicate very well. When we started looking at all of the models with EdMap, of course, we decided to go to the all-in model, and there were a lot of advantages to that all-in model that we did not. Me personally, and I think Carol and myself and Erica, looking at these, we didn't really think that we were going to get so many advantages to this all-in model, but it definitely exceeded our expectations in a lot of different ways. A few ways that I can think of, were the publisher discounts. When we started talking to the publishers, and we started having these relationships with them, where we had actual contracts with them, and like I said, whether it be it's Cengage, Pearson, Wiley, McGraw-Hill, all of those, we started looking at them, and I was blown away by the discounts that these publishers were able to give us. And I guess I was blown away because in my mind I'm thinking, okay, we're an institution that has approximately 2,000 students. not a huge population. You know, they're going to be able to give us some discounts, but not that amazing. And I will definitely say that they exceeded my expectations of those discounts that they were able to provide for us and provide for our students. That, you know, we were able to get that greater affordability to all of our students and help them in that aspect and help them be able to you know, get these course materials and more convenient and better course materials, in my opinion, for all of our student population. And I'm going to let Erica speak now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Noah. One of the other advantages that we saw to this system was a lot of the administrative processes of the institution became automated and a lot less complicated. Previous to implementing the all-in model, we had a voucher system that required one of our financial aid staff to manually enter a voucher into their module in the SIS, and then that had to be manually uploaded in a batch through a script that was created by our IT department, and then the bookstore staff would have to manually kick off this script to upload those vouchers to the vendor. And if somebody was on vacation or somebody was sick or something didn't happen or the script didn't run right, then you got to get IT to come back. And there was just a lot of touch points along the way and a lot of places for the system to fail and for the students to not receive their voucher so that they could then purchase their textbooks on time. Another issue that we saw was that we actually had students that were waiting until they received their financial aid refunds before they would even order their books. And so they weren't receiving their textbooks until, in some cases, the 4th or 5th week of a semester, which, of course, doesn't support academic success when you don't have the textbooks until that late into the semester. And so by having the all-in model, by having an automated process, by not having, you know, 7 different people in 4 different offices involved in a manual process in order to produce a book voucher so that the student can even go through the process of ordering their books and reducing those points of potential failure, it really allowed the process to be really streamlined. Students, when they're going through the process of registration, they get email that notifies them they need to validate their courses, and the textbooks are provided automatically. And so everyone is just kind of removed from this crazy loop of manual processes that are semi-automated or scripted but require someone to manually kick it off, and just took all of that out of the picture. And there's this nice streamlined process now that allows students to receive their textbooks. I will say the biggest point of failure we've had in the system is that students don't read their emails, and if anyone knows how to get students to read any of the 14 communications you send them about how to do something, we'd be certainly would sign up as attendees at that webinar about how to get students to read things. But other than that, it's really become this nice, smooth process for students to get their course materials, and substantially earlier in the process, at the latest by the first day of class, so that they have those materials immediately available to provide opportunity for them to be as academically successful as possible.
And so, of those expected outcomes that we talked about, we had many desired outcomes, and, a recap of those was really that digital migration aspect, the affordability for the students and for the university, content savings, improved student outcomes, easier processes for our faculty and staff, and a true institutional partnership, which, with all of those, I definitely believe that we achieved those. And with some of those achieved outcomes, they include Are we going to the next slide? Yes. Of those, we have there's been so many outcomes that we've achieved through just this first semester of having EdMap go live and having them be a part of the institution, being that partnership that we have. And I know that we're only going to become even better throughout the next few semesters and so forth. But with that digital migration, we currently, for our winter 2017 term, we're at approximately 50% of our adoptions being digital materials. But by fall of 2017, we're projected to go to approximately 80%, which is going to be, again, very important, very substantial, because, as much digital migration, as much digital adoption that we can obtain, that discount becomes so much more for our students, and it really does help them out with that affordability aspect. And, the affordability for our students in university, as of the winter 17 term, we've already been able to reduce those costs by approximately 50%. So, a lot of our students were paying between $600 to $900 per semester for their course materials, and that has been already cut in half with what EdMap has really helped us with, and what these publisher relationships have helped us with. So that's substantial, and I know that's only going to get better as we move towards our upcoming semesters and we move towards more of that digital migration.
Hi, this is Carol again. For the PODs and the OERs, first of all, I'd like to say the print-on-demand text are beautiful. They look like a softbound book, and they deliver all the same content a traditional textbook would have. But by moving to a digital format, we also wanted to provide students with that print-on-demand option. And our students are non-traditional, so they're used to physical textbooks. So we're hoping that as time goes by, more and more students will be embracing this ebook format because of the benefit attached of having that textbook available before the class even starts. From the faculty perspective, I was involved with trying to get faculty all together in this venture, and they obviously love the fact of trying to be part of the solution on trying to reduce the textbook costs for students. And they've also really adopted the concept of OERs also. Those open educational resources are an easy way to help cut those costs dramatically. So they're real excited about this and see a great benefit and a great outcome.
This is Erica again. As we talked about some of the outcomes, as Noah had mentioned, that we've achieved so far, as both Carol and I have mentioned, we had improved in student outcomes. As we mentioned, it supports academic success when you have course materials on or before the first day of class instead of week 4 or 5 of the semester. I already talked about automating the processes and how that's easier for our internal systems. There's eliminated a lot of points of failure to have a process that is not only more efficient for our staff to process, but also is more effective, and that we have greater instances of success in providing materials to our students. And as Noah mentioned about EdMap becoming a true institutional partner, a couple things I wanted to mention specifically about that. We've alluded several times to costs being less through this process, both by the publisher discounts that Noah talked about, the OERs that Carol talked about. And once we got through the semester start for this winter semester that we're currently in, Noah went back and looked, and on average, our students saved between $400 and $900 for this semester alone over what they had paid for their course materials in previous semesters with previous vendors using different models. So when you think about $400 to $900 a semester over the course of a college career, that is a lot of money, which reduced the reliance on financial aid. It allows their financial aid to go farther. So you don't have students getting to their last semester and they're out of aid and trying to graduate. And so it also obviously reduced the total overall cost of attendance as well. All of those are great outcomes for our students as far as, cost and academic success. As I mentioned, it was also a great outcome for us internally for our administrative processes. And the president asked me at one point when we were about 90% done with this project and getting ready for it to launch for the start of the winter semester, and he asked me, how is it going? And I told him, I said, whenever you have a vendor relationship, our team works really hard. We are very, very fortunate to have a very, very strong team of people. And I said, to be perfectly frank, every vendor we have ever worked with, not just with textbooks or course materials, but in any facet of the organization and what we do, our team of folks just works them under the table because they can't keep up with us. I said, and frankly, EdMap is the first vendor we've ever that we've ever had a partnership with that I really felt like they met us at the table and they worked as hard as we did. And that really speaks well of their organization, but it also, I feel, is a big part of why this was such a successful rollout to switch pretty much everyone's way even of thinking about how course materials were provided. So a lot of really good things obviously came out of this partnership with them.
Great, and thank you all very much for running through your story so far. And just wanted to remind everyone that's on the line with us, this is a two-part webinar series. So if you signed up for the first one, you'll get an invite for the second one automatically. So we're going to talk more about the outcomes next month on April 24th. Take a deeper dive into those, and once we've had a little bit more time with the program being live on campus at Hodges. So we'll have a lot more data to present next month, so we hope you join us there. But for now, I just want to talk a little bit, transition into what we're seeing at EdMap in the greater market and from a number of institutions that we're talking with. And like Carol said, this quote from Kevin Corcoran is great. Faculty members really do want to be involved in the solution, and in his quote, faculty members choose the books, and a lot of times they have no idea how much those books cost. If they did, I think they'd be pretty concerned. And so that's that's very applicable to what we're trying to do at EdMap, is to bring some consistency to the affordability issue for students as well as institutions. And when we think about pricing and look at the market overall, over the last really 30, 40 years, we've seen a dramatic increase in the cost of the course materials versus CPI. And we've seen almost a 3 times increase. So and we didn't just sort of land there. That's not something that just happened overnight. There were a lot of different factors that go into this. But a lot of the blame is put on the publishers, and that's not necessarily correct. There's a lot of things that have happened in the market since the mid-'80s that have really kind of driven a wedge between the publishers who we need, who are creating all this great content for the students and institutions. But you saw the rise of a wholesale market in the late '80s. You saw the rise of online in the early 2000s. And then, in mid-2000s, around 2006, 2007, we saw a rise in rental and a further rise in used options for students. So really, it's not necessarily just the prices increasing. There's a lot of different players within the market right now that are all contributing to the increase in costs. Another great piece here from the Department of Labor Statistics, just looking in the last 20 years at the increase of college tuition and textbooks over everything else. So you can see there, new cars, furniture, clothing, all kind of hold steady, a little bit of an increase. Food and beverage and housing, obviously we know that's increased quite a bit around the country. But what's amazing to me is healthcare is so much further below college tuition and textbooks. And so everyone knows how expensive healthcare has become in the last 20 years. And looking at this chart really puts it in perspective, what kind of situation we're looking at in the market right now for content. And those prices are really driving some very difficult student choices. This was a great report from NBC News with the U.S. Public Interest Research Group, and they found in 2014 that 65% of students weren't buying their course materials due to cost. 94% of those students knew that that's not going to be something that's good for their grade, but they're still not buying those materials. And of course, faculty, 93% in this case reported that, they would feel that students would receive higher grades and do better and perform better in their classes if they had those materials, but the students just aren't buying them because of the cost. And it's having a really big impact, a negative impact on student success. 35% of students are taking fewer courses because of the cost of those required course materials. 26% are earning a poor or failing grade due to not having the required materials. And, I think back to that 94% of students that don't buy their books, knowing it's not going to be good for them. A portion of those students know that, the outcome could be that they fail their class, and they're still risking that rather than spending the large sum on their course materials. And finally, 24% are withdrawing entirely or dropping out of courses due to the cost of those required course materials. So with this in mind, with this market in mind, and what we're seeing and what we're hearing from other schools, we've really designed a number of services to address these concerns and issues that we're seeing. Give me one moment here. I'm having trouble advancing the slide. There we go. So we have a number of solutions. The all-in model, or AIM as we call it, is what Hodges selected and went with and implemented and just talked about for a bit in the beginning of the webinar. A number of other services: platform as a service, EPOD, which is that print-on-demand option, our support services, so our help desk for students and faculty, as well as our account management team in Ohio, digital first initiatives we can help with, and also something that Hodges went with moving. A lot of schools have come to us and say, okay, we're at 15% digital materials. We'd like to increase that by 40% over the next 2 or 3 years. We can definitely help with that. And then finally, Curate, which is a service that we have that looks at open educational resources, low-cost options, low-cost publisher options for materials for certain courses where traditional materials might not, be the best fit. And I'm going to talk about these here briefly. I want to make sure we get through these quickly so that we can open up the floor for discussions as well. First, I want to touch on the all-in model. It's a fairly straightforward process. Really, for AIM, the institution will submit to EdMap the faculty adoption list and the book list, and we'll do the matching. We'll then work with the schools to work with publishers to establish the all-in digital and discount pricing. Then we take a look at what needs to be converted to digital by program and population. From there, once we're ready to get started, we set up integration so that we can have automated postings of cost of materials to the student account. And then we provide integrated direct access for all students within the learning environment. And again, this model is the model that Hodges selected, that students save up to 70%. They're able to receive those materials on or before the first day of class. We do not mark up content at all. We simply pass it through our system, but we do offer solutions for increased revenue back to institutions if they choose to do it that way. And as Erica talked about, improving operational efficiency is one of the goals of the programs. And finally, the DOE regulations with opt-out related to course materials, something that's been a bit of a hot button issue for the last couple of years. So it's something that we are in full compliance with and can provide compliance to the institutions for their regulatory bodies. Just to talk a little bit about the student experience. So this is essentially these are essentially the steps that the student takes and what they see when AIM is implemented on campus. So the student would begin by clicking on their course in the learning management system or going to the student portal. We can customize this experience with the institution based on their end goals. You know, a lot of the schools will talk to the students and see how they want it to work. They'll talk to faculty, and then they'll come back to us, and we can really set it up in a variety of ways, all based on the institution's preference. So once the student goes into their course in either the learning management system or the student portal, they're able to validate their course materials. So they essentially see a list of all of their materials for the upcoming term, and they click accept. At that point, they can process a payment there if needed. They can use a credit card, or if it's going to be added to the student bill so that they can use financial aid, we can do that at that step. At that point, all access codes are redeemed automatically for digital materials. So students immediately receive all of those digital materials within the learning management system. We use the Vital Shelf, not Red Shelf. We do work with Red Shelf, but we use Vital Source, and Vital Source, their reader is able to be integrated within the learning management system, so students have a nice seamless experience, all of their materials right there for them. And any materials that are maybe the EPOD or print materials that are remaining are shipped directly to the student's preferred mailing address. I mentioned the platform as a service, and again, just to remind everyone on the line, at EdMap, we do not mark up the cost of content. So the content is going to be purchased at the rates that have been established with the publishers. We do not add any kind of markup whatsoever. So platform as a service provides another way for institutions to take advantage of our services like account support, the OpenView platform that we use to manage adoptions and track student accessibility, and apply a little bit more of a customized solution. So with a monthly fee, the institution is able to get outsourced management and administrative support services. We do a per student FTE fee, and that provides the use of OpenView and access to our integrated content network, as well as those student information system and LMS integrations that I mentioned earlier in the slides here. And then finally, we can add on our services model, and those are just kind of a la carte services fees. So you can have learner support for your students so they can call with questions, physical inventory management and fulfillment. And one advantage there is that we do not outsource our warehouse. Our warehouse is attached to our main office in Nelsonville, Ohio. So something we hear from partners a lot is, if there's a problem, the account manager is able to go resolve it right away. We're not outsourcing it to somewhere across the country or somewhere where we're not invested. And then Curate by EdMap is available per engagement, and I'm going to talk about Curate actually next here in the presentation. So a lot of our partners are looking, at OER and different, more affordable course materials options that are out there in the market, but they're not really sure, how to go about obtaining those materials, finding those materials. And most of our partners are working with that kind of preferred publisher model. So they're working with one or two primary publishers, and they have an agreement in place there. But for the courses that don't necessarily fall into that category, Curate is there. Really, it's about facilitating the discovery, alignment, and selection of multiple types of course content that supports identified learning outcomes. And then, so we essentially get the course syllabus and work with the institution to find those materials, be it OER or YouTube videos or more affordable content. You can put a limit on per course, so you can say I need $25 to $100 spent per course maximum on content for students. And we can essentially develop that annotated bibliography so that the institution can move forward with their courses and would know that they have the right materials that are aligned with the course syllabus and the course objectives that are available to them. So with that, excuse me. previous here. Sorry about that. So, all of our services really are tied to our primary mission to increase the value of educational content by simplifying the discovery, management, and delivery of that content. So, as I mentioned before, we don't mark up content. All of our fees are related to our platform and our services. So it's a different approach that we're taking to try and solve the affordability and accessibility dilemmas that we're seeing, in the marketplace right now. So I'm going to turn this over to Jason for just a moment, and we are going to send out a quick poll. We just want to get a sense of the inclusive access and the institutions that are attending right now. So if you take just a quick moment and select if you, which answer applies the best. So are you considering inclusive access solutions at your institution now? And we'll give this just a moment for everybody to respond.
At this point, we have about 50% that have voted. So the overall status is that 22% of the audience, or those that have voted, said yes, they're having discussions. 22% have started and are in exploring stages, and 22% aren't necessarily doing so at the moment, but they're interested in learning more, and 33% are unsure.
Great. And I want to mention as well that, aside from the webinar that's coming up next month, at the end of this webinar, we'll have a quick, short survey going out that's about 4 questions. It should pop up as soon as you close the window, and if you close it out, it'll send you a quick email. But if you would please take a moment and respond, let us know what you'd like to see. We will definitely use that feedback for the next webinar series as well. But for right now, let's go ahead, and Jason is going to unmute the line, so we will have everyone on the same line at once. So let's go ahead, and if you are not able to speak, if you are not in on a phone, maybe you're just using your computer audio, feel free to use the chat window to ask your questions, and we'll open up to the panelists. Jason, are we all unmuted?
Yeah, everybody's been unmuted. Does anyone have any specific questions that you'd like to ask the panelists at Hodges University? Let me start by asking, can everyone hear me? If you speak out, then we can say if we can hear you or not.
Hi, this is Pete. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, Peter. We have your question. Go ahead and speak here. Feel free to ask the panel your question.
Oh, hi, everybody. I was just curious as to any pushback you might have gotten from faculty with regard to this. I know that you did mention that you had discussions and you got people on board. Perhaps I should rephrase the question in that who was most difficult to convince in terms of buy-in to move in this direction?
Hi, this is Carol. I'll take that question. In general, all faculty completely understood the need to reduce costs for students. And we held multiple sessions with EdMap, and we constantly had NOAA come talk to them at various occasions and ask their questions. So, we are not a traditional institution. So, is everyone 100% on board? Probably not. But they understand the concept and they understand the need, And they themselves, of course, use paper books for years and years and years. And they have slowly migrated, as they've done over time, by reading their books on iPads and tablets and computers, etc. So I wouldn't say anyone was 100% against it, but it's still, we're still in a transition phase. And right now, every concern, every complaint is being addressed. And I think it's something new, and we know how people react to change. Change is very difficult, and especially with your faculty, it's something that we continue to talk to them about.
And to expand on Carol's answer to that, I will also say, in my point of view, it was such a large change for our student population. There were a lot of students that they just didn't really understand how the new process was going to work. And that's what, in one of the slides when I said, make sure communication is key. That's one of those things is really having kind of a student advocate type group for a change this large, because there were quite a few students that they just didn't want to hear of this new change just because they didn't really know how it worked. So I would say we did have some setback with some of those concerns, but really giving those explanations and explaining those things to the student population and to the faculty side as well really, I think, began to help us out with such a large change.
And also, I'll add that it definitely helped having buy-in from the top down. So we started with our deans, and then the deans took it down to their different departments, and they're the ones that help sell it for us also.
And there's a couple of other questions that were posted in the chat window. Russ Adkins asked, has Hodges eliminated its bookstore's traditional function?
Yeah, we sort of have our university store as sort of just kind of that piece where students can come in and it's just for merchandise, things like that, for our just sales in that aspect. So that is correct. We do not have any books whatsoever within the university store. It's more of just for merchandising. We do have computers in there so when students do come on campus, or if they're needing help with validating their course materials, things like that, we have representatives in our store that can help them on the computers with doing that. But yes, we have no physical textbooks within the store now.
Thanks, Noah. There's another question from Mark. He asks, can you expand a bit more on how much or how more and more students are seeking mobile-friendly approaches to education, and how has going digital met this student demand to engage with content via their mobile devices?
Well, I will say with VitalSource being our solution for those digital materials, things like that, VitalSource has helped us so much with being able to allow so many more avenues for the students to view their course materials. It's not just on a computer. They can do them from their mobile phones. They can from an iPad, etc. Anything like that. They can use to actually use and look at all of their course materials. So I will say I think a lot of our students are still just using the computer, but they do have that ability to look through their mobile phone, through, like I said, their tablets, etc., at those materials. And I think that's going to expand as we keep moving forward with EdMap, and we have more digital migrations and adoptions down the road in our future terms. I think that will start expanding. We do have a student advocate team that are are very they're very much about the digital migration. They absolutely love the aspect of having these ebooks and all of those adoptions in that way. And I think that team of students are going to be able to provide more insight to our other student population that, are really kind of unaware that they can use their mobile devices, they can use those tablets to get access to their e-materials that really will help them out in their courses. And I apologize if that, let me know if that didn't answer your question.
And Noah, that may be something as well that we can talk about internally and touch on a little bit further, in the kind of results webinar that we'll be doing next month.
Yes, definitely.
We'll definitely make note of that question.
I think that satisfied the question. Mark said thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? I know we're coming up on time.
Great. Well, if there's no more questions, again, just a quick reminder, we do have that survey that will be coming out. It is only 4 quick questions, so if you would please respond and take just a moment to give us your feedback. We would love to have it. And thank you all very much for attending, and thank you to Hodges University for working with us and sharing your story.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.